Your meter is spinning right now. Nothing is on. No lights, no TV, no oven. The house is quiet, and your meter is spinning. That is not a malfunction. That is your home bleeding money through 40 devices that never actually turn off. Through a compressor that draws 6 times its running current every time it starts. Through a water heater maintaining 140 degrees Fahrenheit for 8 hours while you sleep and never once need hot water. And the device that stops all of it costs exactly $0. You already own it. Most utilities will not tell you it exists. 14 states have actively lobbied to restrict your access to the data it generates. And once you understand how to use it, your bill changes permanently. The average American household paid $1,860 in electricity costs in 2025. That number has climbed 6% annually for 5 straight years, according to EIA data. Not because homes got larger, not because appliances got hungrier, because the way residential electricity is billed obscures what you are actually paying for, and the utility industry has no financial incentive to clarify it. The utility operating under standard rate regulation earns revenue on consumption. Every kilowatt hour you eliminate is revenue they do not collect. That is not a conspiracy, that is a business model. And understanding it is the first step toward dismantling it from inside your own panel. Let me just show you what your meter is actually counting. You've seen this before without knowing what you were looking at. A glass of ice water on a humid afternoon, beads of moisture forming on the outside within minutes. That water did not come from inside the glass. It migrated from the air. Warm air carrying invisible moisture hit a cold surface and surrendered it. That is condensation. You've watched it happen 1,000 times. Your refrigerator compressor does something structurally identical every time it starts. It does not simply draw power, it spikes. A standard mid-size refrigerator with a 700-watt running load pulls 3 to 6 times that figure for the first 1 to 3 seconds of every startup cycle. That's 2,100 to 4,200 watts. For 2 seconds, 12 times a day. Your HVAC system operates at 10 times that scale. A 3-ton central air unit running at 3,500 watts steady state draws between 15 and 25 amps at 240 volts during compressor startup. That's 3,600 to 6,000 watts for 3 to 5 seconds every single cycle. Your meter records all of it. Your utility charges all of it. Your bill shows none of it itemized. That startup surge is called inrush current. It is real power, it is metered power, and it is invisible inside the single monthly kilowatt-hour total printed at the bottom of your statement. Here's what most people get wrong when they start trying to cut their electric bill. They attack the appliances they can see running. The lights, the television, the phone charger. They switch to LED, they unplug the charger, they feel like they did something, and the bill barely moves, because lights account for roughly 9% of residential electricity use. What they never touch is the other 91%. Heating and cooling alone account for 52% of the average bill. Water heating accounts for 18%. Refrigeration accounts for another 8%. These 3 categories run automatically, invisibly, continuously on timers and thermostats that know nothing about your schedule and nothing about what the electricity you're consuming costs per kilowatt hour at the specific moment it is consumed. Now here's the $0 device. Every residential smart meter installed in the United States since 2011 records consumption in 15-minute intervals and transmits that data wirelessly to the utility. As of 2024, approximately 119 million smart meters are installed across the country. If your home was built or renovated after 2010, you almost certainly have one. In 29 states, you have a legal right to access that interval data through your utility's online portal at no cost. In 14 states, utilities have successfully lobbied to limit or delay that access, or to require you to opt in rather than providing it automatically, because the data is not flattering to their revenue model. Log into your utility account, navigate to energy usage, download your interval data. What loads onto your screen is your load profile, a complete timeline of 15-minute demand readings going back 12 to 24 months, showing exactly when and how your home consumes electricity. This is the map. This is what you are never supposed to see clearly. On that graph, 2 features matter immediately: the floor and the spikes. The floor is your baseline consumption, the level of draw when most loads are off, typically late at night. In a well-managed home, that floor sits below 100 watts. In the average American home, it runs between 200 and 400 watts. That gap, the watts burning between midnight and 5 a.m. when no one is consciously using electricity, is almost entirely standby draw, vampire load, the 40 devices in the average home that never fully power down. Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory has studied residential standby power since 1999. Their data shows the average home's always-on devices draw 61 watts continuously. 61 watts, around the clock, every day. That is 534 kilowatt hours per year at the current national average of 18 cents per kilowatt hour. That's $96.12 annually going to your utility for devices that are off. Your cable box alone draws 20 to 30 watts continuously, not when you are watching, always. That single device consumes 263 kilowatt hours per year, displaying a clock on a box you interact with for 4 hours a day. Your microwave and standby? 3 watts. Your game console, 1 to 15 watts. Your washing machine, your dryer, your dishwasher, 1 to 4 watts each continuously. None of them doing anything, all of them metered. The device that stops all of it is your existing power strip. Switched off at the strip, those devices draw 0, not 0.3 watts, not 1 watt, 0. That's the $0 plug, the one you already own, the one sitting behind your television right now with a switch you may never have touched. One switch, 0 additional cost, $96 a year recovered, and that's the conservative version of the calculation. Now the spikes on your load profile. Every time your HVAC compressor cycles, you'll see a vertical jump. Every time your water heater element activates, you'll see a plateau that holds for 20 to 45 minutes. These spikes and plateaus are your cost drivers, and your load profile shows you exactly when they happen, how long they last, and how often they repeat. Once you can see that, the solution is not complicated. It's obvious, and it costs nothing to see. Here's what I want you to sit with before the next section. Your utility has had this data on you for years. 15-minute demand readings transmitted wirelessly, stored in their systems, used to model grid load, used to forecast infrastructure investment, used to set your rate structure. They built the entire smart grid around this data. And the portal that lets you see your own numbers, the one that puts you on the same side of the information gap they've been standing on for a decade, is one login away. Most homeowners have never once clicked on it. The utility industry counts on that. It funds their revenue model. But the next section is where the real money is, because standby elimination is the floor, not the ceiling. And what time of use pricing does to the math changes everything. Time of use pricing is the part of your electricity bill that the utility prints in a brochure and hopes you never actually read. It is available in 31 states and the District of Columbia right now. And if you are on a flat rate structure, you are almost certainly leaving money on the table every single day without knowing it exists. Here's how it works. Under time of use tariffs, the price of a kilowatt hour is not fixed. It changes based on when you consume it. Peak hours, typically 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays, carry rates in California that reach 40 cents per kilowatt hour. Off-peak rates on the same grid, from the same wires delivering the same electrons, drop to 12 cents. That is a 3-to-1 price ratio. The appliance did not change, the electricity did not change, the time changed, and your smart meter records demand in 15-minute intervals, so your utility sees exactly when every major load cycled on. They built that system specifically to charge you more when demand on the grid is highest. What they did not advertise is that you can use the exact same system in reverse. Run your loads off-peak and the 3-to-1 ratio works entirely in your favor. Running your dishwasher at 10 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. cuts that cycle's cost by 70% at California peak rates. Running laundry on Saturday morning instead of Tuesday evening saves approximately 40% per load. Your water heater is the biggest opportunity of all. A standard 4,500-watt element running 2 full heating cycles per day consumes approximately 3 kilowatt hours daily. Over a year, that is 1,095 kilowatt hours from a single appliance. If those cycles happen during peak hours, you are paying 40 cents per kilowatt hour for water you heat at 3 in the afternoon and use at 7 in the morning. A programmable outlet timer costs $8 at any hardware store. Set it to cut power to the water heater at 3 p.m. and restore it at 9 p.m. when off-peak rates begin. A properly insulated 50-gallon tank loses roughly 4 to 6 degrees per hour with no element running. Water heated to 140 degrees at 9 p.m. is still above 110 degrees at 6 a.m. You shower, you notice nothing. Your meter does. At California rates, shifting that single appliance off-peak saves between $180 and $240 per year. One $8 timer, one-time installation, permanent return. A smart power strip runs $12 to $20. It cuts standby draw to zero on every device connected to it the moment the master device powers down. No behavior change required. The strip does the work automatically. Combined with the programmable timer on your water heater, your total hardware investment is $20 to $28. Annual return on a time-of-use rate structure in California or New York? $200 to $400 depending on your baseline load. That math does not require optimistic assumptions. It comes directly from the rate schedules the utilities publish and are legally required to honor. Here is the honest limitation, because you need to know this before you act. If your utility has not yet deployed time-of-use rates in your state, or if you are currently on a flat rate with no peak pricing structure, the timing arbitrage does not apply to you yet. Standby elimination applies everywhere. Load profiling applies everywhere, but the 3-to-1 rate differential is only accessible in states where time-of-use pricing is available and where you have opted into that rate structure. Check your utility's published rate schedules. It takes 10 minutes. It's public record. In many states, switching to a time-of-use plan requires a phone call or an online form. Utilities are not required to proactively move you onto a rate structure that may cost them revenue. You have to ask. Now the part that goes beyond your monthly bill, because if you've been watching this channel, you already know this is never just about a comfortable saving on a normal month. In February 2021, the Texas power grid failed for 151 hours. Temperatures dropped to single digits across a state that had not engineered its grid infrastructure for sustained cold at that scale. Homes without preparation lost heat, water, and refrigeration simultaneously. The people who came through it with the least damage shared one characteristic. They had already thought about their electrical load architecture before it mattered. They knew the refrigerator needed 700 watts running. They knew the HVAC was gone and accepted it immediately rather than trying to hold on to it. They knew the water heater was non-critical for 72 hours and shed it without hesitation. They had a clear picture of what their home actually needed to sustain life, and they had identified the minimum wattage required to deliver it. That knowledge costs nothing to develop. It takes one evening with your load profile and a notepad, and it's the difference between a grid failure being a manageable disruption and a life-threatening emergency. Here's the framework. Tier your loads into 3 categories before you ever need to. Life safety loads are refrigeration for medication, basic communication, and enough lighting to move safely through the home at night. In most homes, that totals 400 to 800 watts continuous. A single 200-watt solar panel paired with 100 amp-hour lithium battery can sustain that load indefinitely in most of the continental United States without any fuel, without any noise, without any supply chain dependency. Critical comfort loads are limited heating or cooling sufficient to prevent medical emergency. Hypothermia sets in below 60 degrees Fahrenheit for elderly or medically vulnerable occupants. Heat stroke becomes dangerous above 95 degrees with no ventilation. A single space heater at 1500 watts or a window unit at 1200 watts addresses both scenarios at a scale a small generator can sustain. Non-essential loads are everything else. Everything else goes off immediately and without negotiation, because the moment you're running a grid-down scenario, every watt you're not spending on life safety is a watt you're burning on comfort you can live without. Homes that have practiced this tiering respond to grid failures the way experienced pilots respond to instrument failures. They have already run the checklist. They know which switches to flip and in what order. Homes that have never examined their load architecture respond the way you'd expect. They try to run everything, burn through fuel or battery capacity in hours, and have no plan when the margin is gone. Your load profile is not just a money-saving document, it's a survival map. It shows you exactly what each circuit costs to run, which loads are essential, which can be shed in the first 5 minutes, and what your true minimum electrical requirement looks like when the grid is not there to absorb your inefficiencies. The people who come through grid failures intact are not the ones with the largest generators or the most solar panels. They're the ones who did this analysis on a quiet Tuesday evening before any of it was urgent. The utility industry has known for years that widespread engagement with interval data and time-of-use pricing would compress their residential revenue. The smart grid was built to benefit grid management, infrastructure planning, and rate design at the utility level. The consumer-facing portal was added because regulators required transparency, not because utilities volunteered it. In 14 states, utilities have successfully limited that access through lobbying. In the remaining states where full access exists, the portal path is buried well below the Pay My Bill button on the homepage. That's not an accident. It's information architecture designed around a specific outcome. You exiting that outcome requires nothing but a login, 30 minutes, and the willingness to look at a graph your utility has been generating about your home for years without telling you it was there. I don't know what brought you here. Maybe you opened a bill last month that felt wrong and couldn't explain why. Maybe you're thinking seriously about grid reliability and you want to understand your own electrical architecture before that question becomes urgent. Maybe it's midnight and an algorithm you can't explain landed you in front of this. It doesn't matter. The meter is already installed. The interval data already exists. The portal is already accessible. The switch on your power strip has always been there. One login, 30 minutes, the map of exactly where your money is going, drawn in 15-minute intervals by the meter your utility installed and hoped you never think to read. Physics does not negotiate rates. Now you know how to read the meter. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.